So it's no secret within the Genshin Impact community that the next region we'll be getting is Inazuma. Previously, we've made videos that cover the region as a whole, and more recently we've made a video that goes into depth about a potential new character, Baal. But while Baal is the Electro Archon, there's more characters than just her in Inazuma. In fact, we know more about some of the other characters than we do about Baal, even though she's one of the main characters from the region. So I decided that I'd make another video that goes into the other Inazuma characters in more detail. Before we start though, this video may contain spoilers about Inazuma if you care about that sort of thing. However, none of it is officially confirmed for the final version, and everything here is subject to change. But now let's get into it. Right, so probably one of the most talked about characters that we've seen from Inazuma so far is Ayaka, the princess of the Kamisato house. She was made available in the first closed beta test, in which we got to see her attacks and her appearance. So first things first, her weapon is a sword and her vision is a cryo, and she's going to be a 5-star character. However, we don't have to speculate her attacks, because we actually know them already. Her elemental skill causes cryo damage and launches opponents away at the same time, which I can see having some very interesting uses in battle. Her burst creates 3 blade storms, which will deal cryo damage to enemies in their path, and eventually they'll explode and deal a larger radius of cryo damage. Her burst storms look pretty similar to Venti's burst, but instead a cryo version. It's also worth pointing out that she has an alternative sprint, just like Mona. She hides within flowing sleet, and her movement speed across water is greatly increased. With all of these points, she sort of seems like a cross between many different characters to me. Obviously, her sprint is like Mona's, but her attacks kind of seem like your typical Anemo attack, but instead being infused with cryo. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem all too new to me. But we know about more characters than just Ayaka, so let's discuss a few more. Now, probably the next most talked about character is Kazuha. Once again, he's a 5-star sword user, but he has an Anemo vision instead of a cryo. While he is technically from Inazuma, seeing as he wields a vision in the Inazuma style, he's currently based in Liyue. This is because he's a Ronin, which, if you didn't know, is the term for a samurai without a master, and he currently lives with the Crux fleet in Liyue. So he has connections to Bido, an already existing character within the game. But just like we did with Ayaka, let's go into more depth about his attacks. Once again, we do actually know for a fact what his attacks are, since we've seen video footage of his gameplay. His elemental skill seems similar to Venti's. It sucks in nearby enemies and launches them up into the air, and then it lifts Kazuha up so that he can initiate a plunging attack. If he does a plunging attack in this situation, then all of the plunging damage will become Anemo damage. It also creates a wind current that pulls in enemies nearby. These two attacks can potentially be used together to great effect, as he can gather up enemies, launch them, and then he can do a plunging attack to gather them up again and deal even more Anemo damage. As for his elemental burst, it creates a large ring with the same wind patterns as on his clothes, and also some maple leaves. His burst is less exciting because it just deals AoE Anemo damage. However, the area is pretty big, so that's a bonus. But out of battle, Kazuha has a passive talent that reduces his sprinting stamina consumption by 20%, just like Kaya and Razor. This could potentially come in handy, seeing as he's the first 5-star character to have this skill, and so he could likely be on your team, unlike Razor or Kaya, which you probably wouldn't find on a proper team. Right, so back when I did the video about Inazuma, I didn't actually include anything about Scaramouche, whether it was talking about his playability, or even just talking about his presence within Inazuma. So since at least one person was unhappy about that, I'm going to rectify my mistake and talk about Scaramouche as a potential playable character. Before we discuss him though, I have to point out that this point of the video is mostly speculative, since at the moment we don't even know if he'll be able to join your party. This is because, like Tartaglia and Signora, he's a Fatui Harbinger. Of course, we've been able to play as Tartaglia despite this, but we haven't yet seen Signora as playable. so whether or not he'll be able to join our roster is debatable, but for the sake of this video we're just going to assume that all of the Harbingers will be playable at some point, just for the sake of simplicity. Okay, so first of all we should discuss Scaramouche's weapon and his element. We know nothing officially yet, but he has been leaked to use a catalyst and to wield an electrovision. I must say that I agree with this leak. He definitely looks the part for an electro user, and as for the weapon, I would have either guessed he would use a catalyst or a polearm, just from my personal first impressions. However, we can't forget that Scaramouche is also one of the Fatui Harbingers, and so alongside a vision he also wields a delusion. If you've got no idea what I'm talking about, by the way, I recommend that you go and watch our video about Snezhnaya, where we go into more depth about what a delusion actually is. While we do know that delusions aren't usable in your party, seeing as Tartaglia has no form of electro attacks, it will still be fun to speculate what element his delusion will be, seeing as we can't really speculate his attacks at all. If we do some research on the internet's most trusted platform, Reddit, then we can find this poll that asked the very same question that I'm asking. As you can see, the results of this poll concluded that he would suit a pyro delusion. But of course, this is all just opinion based. I doubt that anyone voted on this poll with concrete evidence, so let's do a bit of that for ourselves. So far, the only clue that we have is the relation between Tartaglia's vision and his delusion. Seeing as his delusion is electro, that's the direct weakness of his vision. So if that carries on, then Scaramouche should have a cryo delusion. But to be honest, I don't know how much I agree with this. Scaramouche gives off no hint at being cryo, and there's also a flaw with our reasoning. The pattern we've used doesn't include Animo, Geo or Dendro at all, and so how will they be accounted for? It also means that any Harbingers with the same vision element will also have the same delusion element, and so because of those two facts, I think we can rule out this method. So I'm just going to stick with popular opinion and say that he'll be Pyro, because why not? So those are the three main characters we've seen from Inazuma, excluding Baal, but there are two more minor characters that we haven't yet mentioned. The reason I'm lumping them together like this is because we know barely anything about either of them. So the first one is Yae Sakura, who appeared in the Chinese 1.5 special program. The only art we've seen of her is chibi, so we don't have an in-game character model for her. We also don't know what weapon she uses, but she appears to have an electrovision on her chest. We do also know a little bit of her story. She's the chief priest of the Grand Narukami Shrine, and she is apparently an old friend of both Morax and Baal. The other character we've had a leak for is called Mimi. Other than this image of her game model, we know pretty much nothing about her. The only other thing we know about her is that she uses a catalyst with a hydrovision, but bear in mind that this is a leak and so it may be subject to change. It may also be completely false, so take it with a grain of salt. So those are all of the Inazuma characters that I could personally think of. If I missed any, then as per usual, make sure to let me know down in the comments. Also, if you want to see me speculate in much more depth and detail, then you can check out our video that's dedicated to Baal, which is linked in the description. But yeah, I think that's about all, so have a good one.